So for number 32, when you're multiplying, you multiply the r values and you add the thetas and everything else is the same. So the r values for both of the numbers were 3 and 6. We multiply those and get 18. The thetas were pi over 12 and pi over 6. And when we add those, we get pi over 4, right? Pi over 12 and pi over 6 becomes 3 pi over 12, which becomes pi over 4. So that's our final answer. For division, we divide r1 divided by r2. It's theta 1 minus theta 2 in parentheses. So the order matters. So r1 for the first number goes on top. Theta 1 goes before theta 2 when you subtract. So we have 3 divided by 6, r1 divided by r2, which simplifies to 1/2. And then we subtract pi over 2 minus pi over 6, which is negative pi over 12. If we want to write a positive value, we write 11 pi over 12. Number 34, we use De Moivre's theorem. There are different options. They'll give you the same answer. I like using this one. So n is the power that you are raising a number to, complex number. So right here, we're raising to the 4th power, so that's why our n is 4. And then our r is the base, so the r value is square root 2. And then our n again is 4, inserted in front of theta. Our theta is 225. And, first of all, we know that the r is square root 2 because if this is the complex number, -1, -I, we go to the left 1 unit and we go down a unit. So using the Pythagorean theorem, we get an r value of square root 2. And then remember, finding theta is a little bit harder. So you have to think about the quadrant you're in. And if you want to think about it as an x, y, or cosine, sine ordered pair, for tan, it would be sine over cos, the right side of the ordered pair over the left. The ratio is 1. So tan ratio of +1 in quadrant 3 would be 180 degrees plus 45 degrees, which is what would get us the 225 degrees. And how we also know that is tan ratios of 1 in quadrant 1 is at 45 degrees. So I like to just kind of keep reflecting and spin around the circle. And then I say, okay, from this axis, if I'm at 180, I add that other 45, and that gives me that value once it's reflected from quadrant 1. Okay, so now that we know theta is 225 and r is square root 2, we plug it in like I showed you up here. Now 4 times 225 got us 900. So then we were finding cos 900 plus, it's always and I sine 900 degrees. Now 900, right, degrees not on the unit circle, you have to keep looping around. So 360 is one loop, another 360 is 720. And then we add another 180, and that gets us to 900. So as we keep spinning around, 900 degrees is at the same spot as 180 degrees. And at that spot, we ordered pairs -1, 0. So cos is -1, sine is 0 at 900 degrees because it's the same spot as 180 degrees. So then when we fill out the rest, we say the cos at that spot at 900, or you could say 180, the cos is left side ordered pair, -1. The sine at 180 degrees, or sine at 900, same spot, is 0. 0 times I is gone. We distribute in the -4, so the 4. 4 times -1 is -4, and I times 0 is 0, so we end up with -4 as our final answer. So for this next one, we are given z equals square root of 3 plus I. So r is the easiest thing to find. We need r and we need theta. So r, we're going to make a right triangle. So again, we went to the right, root 3 units, we went up 1 unit because it's 1i. So square root of 3 squared plus 1 squared equals 2 squared. So the square root and squared cancel. So we have 3 plus 1 squared equals, well, it was our unknown. And so we have 4 is c squared. So c was 2. Hypotenuse is positive. So we found our r value, the hypotenuse, the distance from the center, and then theta, think about that ordered pair as to the right root 3 units up 1 unit. So if it's tan, it's the right side, sine over cos, left side. Rationalize denominator by multiplying by root 3 over 3. So we're saying in quadrant 1, where is tan root 3 over 3? And it's root 3 over 3 at 30 degrees. So we then just fill in z equals, our r value is 2, cos of the theta was 30, or you could say pi over 6, plus I sine of 30, or you could say pi over 6. So for 36, you were just supposed to graph this complex number from number 35. For number 37 on your packet, it's a little bit easier to graph because you have that polar plane that you can plot the point in. But remember, for ordered pairs that are written as r theta, you first do your spin and then you do your move. So you do your r value second, the number of rings out. So because 4 pi over 3 is positive, we're going to start here. We're going to spin 4 pi over 3 units, or to 240 degrees. And then because 4 is positive, we start at the pole and we go 4 rings out towards 240. If this r value is negative, we would just go in the opposite direction. So if it was negative, we would head out in the opposite direction 4 units. But this is our dot. So for 38, we have -1, -1. Again, we're drawing right triangles. So we go to the left one, up 1. We find the hypotenuse, Pythagorean theorem. At this dot, our ratio for tan is right side over left side, which is -1. And we know that the ratio for tan is 1 in the first quadrant. So if we're in second quadrant, we're reflecting. And if we know that we're going to add 45 to 90 degrees, we end up at 135 degrees. So theta is 135, r is square root 2. So if we want to write it as r comma theta, we have an r value of root square root 2, theta of 135. Now these other two will get you the same spot on that plane. They're just different ways of writing it, right? For this first one, if you were to graph, you would spin 135 degrees and then you would move out root 2 units towards it. Similarly, if we were going to use this guy, we would spin in the opposite direction, -225 degrees, and we would start the pole, move out towards it, root 2 units. And then if we were going to use this last one, we would spin in the positive direction, 315 degrees. And then because we have a negative r value, we would head away from the 315 degrees 4 units. So all 3 of those are at the same spot, just different ways of writing it. For this last one, we know that for 39, x squared plus y squared equals r squared. And so if they tell us that r is 2, we just plug that into the r slot. And when you square it, you get 4. So we have x squared plus y squared equals 4.